We'll move on to the regular meeting of the Cunningham Town Board as soon as the clerk gives us the high sign.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Ms. Wu?
Here.
Ms. Hersey?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Colebrook?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
Ms. Chenoweth?
Present.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Okay. Next up is minutes, approval of minutes from the previous meeting. That's November 9th, 2020, which has tentative. Are these draft minutes or these?
Yeah, they're draft.
Okay. And then November 23rd, 2020, which was a special meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Okay, I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Mary Alice. Are there any corrections? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? None? Okay. Next item is public participation. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? Okay. I see no hands raised among the attendees. All right, we'll move on to committee to verify bills, town fund and general assistance fund.
So as you will see for the town fund this month, and I have the totals on page 2 of my memo. It's the second half of page 2. Under the town fund, we had $130,304.28 in expenditures. With the general assistance fund, we had $99,907.45 in expenditures. There's a total of $230,212.73 in expenditures. You'll see that our general assistance participants have remained pretty steady. We're at 136, down from 139. We had 7 closed and 3 open during this time. 56 are homeless. And you can see some of the information related there. Our community work program remains closed in November. We do see a number of people having difficulty applying and qualifying for general assistance, in part because of how slow the process is with the shutdown, gathering pay stubs, IDS information, Social Security. We do have interns who work directly with applicants, but I think that that's part of the reason that we're seeing some of that drop off. And let's see, CUREC funding, because it's related to some of the bills that are going out the door. We are both this month and next month, particularly next month, you'll see a large number of expenditures as we spend down the CUREC funding. It's about $204,000 in CUREC funding. We've been approved for $91,000 approximately of those dollars, and I've actually asked for additional funding. We do anticipate that we'll be exceeding that piece. So you'll see some of those expenditures, the CUREC expenditures this month in this town bills detail, and you'll see more next month as well. And we are gearing up rental assistance. We only did 2 this last month. We did 6 the month before. I changed the rules on December 1st because of COVID. There's a lot of people being approved who don't then get payment made because frankly, our assistance amounts are not sufficient to pay down their debts. So after speaking with our rental assistance partners, I've changed that to 2 months of rental assistance, and I've increased you can be making your rent can be up to 70% of your income. So you can be extremely rent burdened and still receive rental assistance. And with that, we are moving a lot of rental assistance this month. We really want to do that in advance of the end of a potential end of the eviction moratorium. And I anticipate I'll be bringing several dozen rental assistance items to you next month. So just a heads up on that piece. Happy to answer any questions about the town bills.
Mary Alice?
Yeah, I have two questions. My first question is there is, I believe it's training for Scott Winter. I'm assuming that this is some kind of training that you're doing online, or I don't know if that's Danielle or if that's Wayne. If you could tell me a little bit more about that.
It's Wayne.
I'm sorry, Mary Alice, where you at in the
It's
the
page
bills?
7. It's page 7 of the detailed bills. It's a IAAO course 201 with Scott G. Winter.
So Scott Winter is the vendor, is the vendor. And that paid for 4 course packets for training.
Okay, so was that part of a conference or something? Because right below it on page 8, there's travel for a hotel in Chicago.
No, that was a separate. That was separate.
So okay, so but there was training in Chicago this past month, it sounds like.
Yes.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
My second question had to do with consulting services for Don Owen. If you could give me a little more detail about that.
Yeah, so I reached out to contract with Don Owen to help me with the Cure Act reimbursement process because I simply don't have enough administrative time. And so if I didn't add capacity to my plate, then essentially we wouldn't be able to get reimbursements moved quick enough. So I assigned him to research facilities improvements that we need to make under COVID. He made a series of safety recommendations. He made a recommendation for a security system and a locking system. And I'm going to actually be purchasing those either through F.E. Moran or Dave and Harry's Locksmith. And so it was probably a number of hours just speccing it out, meeting with the vendors and trying to get that piece done, which I just didn't have capacity to do. So I reached out to his consulting service to do that.
Okay, all right. And I have some questions about the rental assistance, but I'll wait for the township report. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Jared?
Make a motion to approve the town fund and the general assistance fund.
Is there a second?
I'll do that. Dennis.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Dennis. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is reports of officers.
Yeah, so I'll just add a few highlights from my supervisor's memo, which is goes on for a while. With the primary issue we've been facing this last month, and I've looped the mayor and head of grants management, Sheila Dodd, into a lot of the conversation about this. But essentially, we have been chasing our tails with utilities shutoffs. Many of you had signed a letter in support of ending shutoffs, both by Ameren and Illinois American Water. Thanks in large part to that pressure, Ameren agreed to end shutoffs 2 weeks early, which was a great reprieve for us. I did meet with Richard Mark, who is the CEO and president of Ameren, Illinois. Thanks to Carol Ammons, our state rep, who convened that conversation with Scott Bennett and others. Julie Pride was on the call, and we found out that 68 households still remain with their power shut off due to non-payment. Some of those may be move-outs, so we're not sure exactly what the situation is. And I asked, how much money are we talking about? And it's about $60,000 in bills for those 68 households. We've been working to see if they could share the addresses of people behind on power with RPC, and they have said they cannot do that due to privacy concerns. So we are now asking if they would mail something, starting with the 68 households, to notify them of how they could get their power turned off, and specifically asking them to reach out to their local townships so that we can support them with whatever case management they need beyond just making a simple phone call, because clearly that's not enough, and it hasn't been enough with the folks we've been helping. Water shutoffs remain a concern. We continue to reconnect water, I would say about twice a week, a family, almost always a family with children. I think only one family has not had children. We've helped to reconnect. I think we're at 6 families at this point. Then anyone who's behind on bills, the township is not doing reconnections. We are referring people to LIHEAP, Salvation Army, the City of Urbana's COVID CDBG program. But once someone is cut off, it's such an emergency situation. As long as they prove that they live in Urbana and they can show us the disconnection notice, we've been turning those back on. And I have to say it's 100% from angel donor funds. It's all private donations that have allowed that to happen, which has just been amazing. Most recently, and this just happened this afternoon, but CU Public Health allocated dollars to both townships to help to support for utility payments and rental payments. So that will help as well. We are working with a consortium of agencies. The City of Urbana is at the table, as is the City of Champaign, the townships, RPC, Salvation Army, and others. And we are working on kind of outreach strategies leading up to, so there's a voluntary moratorium, which doesn't seem to be working for the lowest income families who are still getting disconnected, but generally is stemming the tide. But we're concerned about that moratorium when it's lifted, there being a slew of utility shutoffs. And I know that the city has taken some leadership in supporting sanitary district disconnections, and I appreciate that intervention. I think we need to pay very close attention to the utility shutoffs. And then I would just add to this that we continue to do significant assistance in light of COVID-19. Most of our work really is kind of in response to that right now. And we do have an emergency housing program for families. We are exclusively working through the school district and crisis nursery, so that you have to basically prove you have children in the Urbana schools or staying at crisis nursery, and you are literally homeless, and we're able to support those families because otherwise they have no place to go. So we received a $10,000 angel donor fund grant, private donation to support that program. We also have additional dollars with the new budget. So I'm going to actually, because so many changes have happened, both dollars in and dollars out, I'll be bringing a new budget to you. And I will have that funded in a more stable way through our levy. But I think it's just been fantastic. We've been 100% funded through angel donor funds for that emergency housing program. And it's been very successful. We've had not a single person return to street homelessness. They've either 25% in subsidized housing, about 25% going into market rate housing with either disability checks or earned income, and about 50% into the emergency family shelter, which takes a while to get in. So we've been able to provide that bridge. So that's been very important. We met with USD 116. I'm going to be bringing an MOU. I'm working on MOUs with them and Crisis Nursery. I'll check with legal to see if those need to go through town board. But essentially, we are going to have a relationship of referral through those agencies. I'm really excited about that piece. And we have just been going really strongly on the housing advocacy piece. We did have our ESG COVID dollars finally. The grant has been signed. You authorized my signature on that, but we had not actually received the grant as of our last meeting. So you pre-authorized my signature. I was able to sign it the day I got it. And we are launching that with the first of the year. And that is called Bridge to Home. It is a program that will house literally homeless individuals who are staying in shelters or on the street we will rehouse and provide up to a year of tenant-based rent assistance and intensive case management services. So we're really excited about that program. It's a new program. It fills an important gap in our community. We don't have a lot of rapid rehousing programs. We expect 2 COVID grants for that, and then we are going to be applying for the standard ESG funding in the next year. So the goal is to really make that a stable and ongoing program. To poco a poco, we're going to, house the homeless in Urbana, and we will get there. So I'm very excited about that piece. And then I'll last just say that our Bucket Brigade has been amazing. We are having an event December 20th on the south side of Lincoln Square by the Common Ground Food Co-op. We will have coats, hats, mittens, and warm weather gear for free. Families and individuals can come. They will let us know how many are in their family, and they can basically shop for that number of coats. And the last time we did this is in partnership with the Channing Murray Foundation. We had 200 coats, 100 pair of mittens, 100 pair of socks. It was all gone in 45 minutes. So we've had to really up our game. So we have many more hundreds of coats. And I just want to do a special shout out to Mike Ingram, because he's gathered over half of the coats that we're going to be distributing. He's personally gathered and brought to our office. So we're going to have hundreds of coats, and then we are purchasing gloves and hats and socks, because we just simply haven't had enough donations. We've had a lot of donations, but we want to make sure that nobody leaves empty-handed. So we are using some of the CURE funding to actually purchase some of the warm weather gear, and we'll be distributing that on the 20th. Stay tuned. I'll let you know how many people show up. And we just continue to have a very high volume. Luckily, I've been able to staff up using CURE dollars and grants dollars. And so we are able to continue to answer the phone when people call. We're getting back to folks and moving applications through. So I feel like we've become very efficient in serving the public. We're doing, last year we served about 1,000 residents in Urbana. And this year, once I'm done counting the numbers, it's gonna be closer to 3,000 to 4,000 residents. So I'm very proud of our team.
Any questions for Danielle? Mary Alice?
Danielle, as I was looking through the supervisor memo, you talked about making some changes to the rental assistance program. And previously, if I remember correctly, the rental assistance program was supposed to kind of bridge that short amount of time in which somebody got an eviction notice to bring them up to current balance so that they could stay in their housing. So 2 questions. The first one is, I believe all those payments are directly made to the landlords, right? To bring them up to.
That's correct. Yep, we make a payment to the landlord after they have shown through a ledger from the landlord. It's a verified landlord. They have to show that they are down to the payment amount that I have approved. And at this point, for eviction prevention, it's 2 months of what is on their lease. And for move-in, it's deposit plus first month's rent. So the cap of assistance, instead of it being a flat $600, we've actually moved it to being 2 months or a deposit of first months. And that's consistent with some changes made at RPC as well. So we're kind of shifting with our partners around that model.
Okay, and then they also have to have some kind of evidence that they can keep up with their rent, right? They have to have some kind of income coming in that would allow them to stay current with their rent.
Correct. For a standard rental assistance program, you have to show that you have income in the last 30 days, such that your rent at this point is no more than 70% of your income. So it used to be you were capped at 50%. We've increased that to 70% because we're seeing so many people on unemployment. And so we're trying to be flexible just as we are with people on disability. We've always allowed up to 70% with folks on fixed incomes like disability, and we've basically shifted that for everyone under COVID. That seems to be working pretty well. It's not a great situation, but I think it's a stopgap measure to get us through during this time.
Okay, but it does sound like it's an expansion of the program to pay security deposit and the first month's rent, because before people are already in their housing, right? Now
No, it's always been, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's always been a move-in for the homeless or eviction prevention.
All right.
So it's always been up to $600 for either. And by homeless, you can, for this program, you can be literally homeless, or you can be a family who is doubled up with someone. So if you are not on the lease and you have children, we consider you, it's McKinney-Vento Definition Act homeless. You're considered homeless, and we can help you move into your own place as long as you show that sufficient income. That's always been the case. That hasn't changed. It's
Okay.
just the dollar amount that has changed, and that gives us well, it does a couple of things. It actually means for people who are subsidized, they're getting less of a support from us, because maybe they're subsidized and they only have to pay $100 deposit and $200 for their first month's rent, then they get $300. Whereas if you're a family and your rent is $1,000, then you would get, and your deposit is $1,000, you get $2,000. So we really felt like it was fairer, and going forward, I'd like to stick with this kind of parameter, that it really is, 2 months of rent means different for different sized households with different subsidy situations. And I think this is a more fair, or a fairer way of going forward, is just to provide those 2 months of whatever is on your bill.
Okay. And then last but not least, if we go down to the housing advocacy, you had mentioned that you were assisting 76 households to apply for subsidized housing and 7 housing options this fiscal year. So that says to me that there were 7 housing opportunities, not that we moved 7 people into housing, because it's a line, right?
Yeah, the second bullet point, so far we have been successful with 14 households. Yeah, moving into 7 opportunities, and an opportunity might be a location like Steer Place or Washington, or it might be a time-bound opportunity like the wait list, actually getting folks on the wait list for Bristol Place, or applying for homestead apartments. So I kind of wanted to let folks know the parameters of how many opportunities. Sometimes that number is smaller than it should be.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm that was the right.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Bill?
Yeah, on the in the additional assistance, the emergency assistance, where you say you had 10 households helped in November, 3 families with children, and 9 for the fiscal year, with the average hotel stay of 39 days. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
We track move in and move out, and then I have an average calculation.
Okay, I didn't realize people had to stay in hotels that long.
Oh, that's pretty standard. So the standard for emergency shelters, 30 to 45 days is pretty standard. So domestic violence shelter, you can stay for 30 days with an extension to 45 days. For emergency shelter, you can stay for 30 days with an extension to 45 days. So it is pretty standard. We do have a monthly rate with our hotel partner where we don't pay taxes and we pay a flat monthly rate. So it ends up being honestly about comparable to, it's cheaper than a furnished, all services apartment. It's pretty comparable to an empty apartment. So I feel like the rate has been pretty good for us to stay, for folks to stay for that month.
Yeah, I think what concerns me is just the lack of kitchen facilities. So they're kind of reliant on takeout or delivery, or I don't know.
So, and I should mention that everyone who stays in our emergency shelter program, basically we do an emergency food delivery through our bucket brigade, usually the day or 2 after they move in. And we actually have packs of ready-made foods that are microwavable, ready to go in that situation. We also provide laundry soap and things for the tokens, basically for laundry facilities, so that people don't have to go off site. Those are 2 of the inconveniences of a hotel stay. It is nice to have, what's nice about it is it's basically staffed through the hotel situation. It's not case managed, we provide that, but it is staffed 24/7.
Okay, thanks.
Dennis, did you have a question?
Yeah, one of the items that you mentioned here, the disability advocacy, you indicate that while waiting for disability payments, 2 individuals passed away this last month. And does that mean that they were waiting and waiting but never did receive their disability help?
It's there are many tragedies in 2020, and I think one of the tragedies that is most deeply felt in our office is the 5 participants who basically in the last 6 months, it's all post-COVID, have died while waiting for disability payments. All of them have been homeless. It's the largest number of deaths we've had in such a short period of time. These are our friends and neighbors and people we work really closely with. And so it's very difficult on our team. But yes, we did have somebody who was actually the first person I met when I came in as township supervisor, and she was waiting disability payments then, and that was almost 4 years ago. And she had not received that disability payment and passed away about 4 weeks ago. So my response to that is, we do have a SOAR advocate that I brought on who's funded out of those reimbursements, and we are really upping our game. The other thing we've done is we've reached out to several community partners, and I will share their names when I'm able, when they've committed. But what we're trying to do is have several community partners agree to and apply to the mental health board for funding for SOAR advocates. The SOAR advocates are the advocates who help people, especially the most vulnerable, such as the homeless, apply for disability. I really would like to make it a goal in our community. Right now we have 2 SOAR trained advocates, one in my office and one in Rosecrans, and that is it for the whole community. And I would really like to see 5 to 6 within the next year. So I'm actually meeting with mental health board and several agencies that are interested in cultivating this so that we could really expand the capacity of our ability to case manage and move these. So I guess I'm trying to put the energy of that tragedy into that initiative.
Yeah. What is the cause for the delay? I mean, years of delay. What is it that there's just not very, are they not meeting the requirements or are they, is there just like limited funds and there's a waiting list?
The very short version of the story is, imagine that you have a cognitive issue and you have to navigate probably the most complicated system that you could possibly imagine. And there is nobody, whether they're a case manager or an attorney, who is willing to help you. So there is not a single attorney in town, and I have attempted to find them, correct me if I'm wrong, who will help someone apply for Social Security disability. They will help you appeal, but not apply. And I've met with attorneys in their offices to try to figure out why this is. I don't quite understand it. So your application is so critical because it's the groundwork for any appeal. As Fred and any attorney is listening knows, you want to make sure your initial case is solid, right? And then the appeal, you have a leg to stand on. But people are submitting their own applications and they have no support in doing this, with the exception of our office and Kathy Finley at Rosecrans, who are, Kathy's an amazing human being, but she's only one. So I really think, Dennis, that's it. We're trying to solve that problem by helping people in their application process to basically make sure all of the pieces that they need to apply appropriately are submitted. And without that, it is like threading a camel through the eye of a needle.
It's a sad thing to hear, and thank you for sharing it. Maybe it'll change.
We're working on it.
Sharice.
Danielle, does it seem like it's gotten worse with the pandemic as far as people applying for their Social Security disability, and will the Social Security Administration offices in Champaign, because I know that's where they're located, do they have anybody that will help people with their applications there?
Yeah, so they won't help people with their applications. You call You can apply online. So they ask you, you can apply over the phone. So you have an appointment where they ask you questions and you have to answer it. But a lot of the questions are very specific. At what day did X happen? When did you experience this? It's not something that you can just do a phone call and have the information. It's like applying for a job off the top of your head, right? It just doesn't make any sense at all. So I would say that during the pandemic, we have observed more people being confirmed for disability payments. That's a good sign.
Okay.
We have seen it harder to access the Social Security Administration because they can only do it online. And I would just encourage you, since everyone can set up an SSA.gov account, you should try to set up an SSA.gov account and, email me how it goes for you. I have tried myself. I had tried to help other people do it. And if you can put all the correct information in and still be locked out for 48 hours. So, but you should try. You should try and see if you could set up an SSA.gov account. I think I would give you maybe for a group of people like yourself who are technically savvy, I give you a 60% success rate, which I think is a D in high school.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't mean to depress you on your evening, but it's a sad state of it.
Oh, I know. I know. I can understand it. I just wanted to know if it, because you said this one lady had been on trying to get her disability even when you met her 4 years ago.
Yeah, I would say a lot of our folks wait 6 to 8 years. I'm seeing that, and actually with this particular woman, she was identified for SOAR advocacy, but it was very hard because of the chaos of her situation to have her, she wasn't making appointments regularly to work on the case. So we were actually trying to do a SOAR based application, SSI application on her behalf. She was one of the people we had identified as the most vulnerable. And actually all 5 who died were all people who were marked as the most vulnerable people that we were working with. And we had added additional case management and support to their situations. Because we knew, it's not once you get to know people and we have the kind of relationships that we have, we know what their situation is. And we know how vulnerable it is. And, a lot of the folks we've gotten into housing, those numbers, those 14, they are 14 of the most vulnerable that we work with. We prioritize the people that we think are the most likely to experience kind of tragedy as she did, so.
Thank you, Danielle. Can we move on to Wayne? Did you have a report?
I'm just going to report that I was not able to successfully set up a SSA.gov account.
Thank you, Wayne. You're part of that 40%. I'm telling you. Just try. Just go ahead. Everyone who's listening, all you who are going to be on the city council in the future, go ahead and try. I dare you.
Do you have anything to add, Wayne? No? Okay. We'll move on to unfinished business. Is there any?
There's not.
Okay, under new business, the first item is the audit presentation for FY 2021, Clifton Larson Allen.
Mm-hmm. And I think Hope Wheeler is with us from CLA. Hope, thank you for your patience as we go through the supervisor's memo. CLA has been our provider, I believe, for 5 years. So this is our last year in a 5-year contract that we have with CLA to provide audit services. And frankly, as it being the last year, I just want to thank Hope and her team because I came on with very little transition 4 years ago. And so there was a lot of work to be done to just kind of put everything back together. So the audit team has been really helpful in looking things over and making sure that as we grow our programs that, we're growing things appropriately. And we had a very strong and clean audit this year. So she's going to be presenting to you this evening. And I believe that we sent a PowerPoint presentation to be shown to you. If it's helpful, I could also do it as a share screen, whatever works. There we go. Great. Thanks, Jason.
You guys hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
You're a little quiet, but we can hear you.
Okay, let me see if I can fix that. All right. Yes, thank you for having me here tonight to present the results of the June 30, 2020 audit. If you want to skip these slides ahead to page 4, please. I'm going to just kind of jump through the table of contents directly to our deliverables from the audit process. This summarizes the governance communication, which is a required letter we provide to the governing board to talk about our work with your management team there during the audit process. Some highlights of this letter: there were no new GASB's new government auditing standards required to be implemented this year. The standard setters were kind, and anything that was required, they postponed. I don't think you had anything of significance affecting you anyway. There were no significant estimates in your financial statements. That's generally true when you're on a modified cash basis of accounting versus accrual basis. And then we had no difficulties with management and no disagreements with management. The audit group that we worked with there at the township during the audit process, you know, as we've been talking about, it's been a challenging year for everyone. We started a little bit later, but we were still able to get through the audit on a timely basis, and appreciate Danielle and Darcy and everyone's hard work on helping us through the audit process and providing all the documentation that we needed to complete this. Lastly, in the governance letter, we let you know if we had any audit adjustments in the process. We didn't have uncorrected ones. We didn't pose any adjustments that weren't corrected. There were 4 adjusting entries. I believe they're attached to that letter. They were not significant or not material. 2 adjustments in the town fund and 2 adjustments in the general fund. On the next slide, page, just to review some highlights from the financial statements. The crux to our audit is our opinion on the financial statements, and we did issue an unmodified, meaning no modifications to our opinion, or a clean opinion on these financial statements, that these are properly stated in accordance with the modified cash basis of accounting. Your statement of net position includes all your funds on the modified cash basis. Your total assets at the end of the fiscal year was $2.3 million, and that equals your net position. Since you're on the cash basis, you don't show liabilities. $56,000 of those net position assets are tied up in your capital assets. Then you had 1.3 million, essentially 1.2 million in restricted net position related to general assistance, and then 993,000 of unrestricted net position. The statement of activities then is your change in net position for all funds. It was a decrease this fiscal year of 556,000. Here on the next set of financial statements, we show your financial information by fund. So if you're used to seeing the information by fund, like we've just been hearing about, this might be a more useful statement for you. It shows the town fund and the general assistant fund, individual revenues and expenses. Both funds did have net expense this fiscal year over revenues. The town fund, 163,000 net loss, and the general assistance fund, $383,000 net loss. Now, later in the financial statements, you'll see budget to actual reports, and as you probably remember, I believe these were budgeted this way, so not necessarily unexpected. And when we're going through some of the graphs I have on the next slide, you can change to the next slide, you can see there was also fluctuation with the timing of property taxes. So here, this slide just put together a comparison over a 3-year period to show you revenues for fiscal year 18, 19, and 20. You can see 1.1 million in 18, down to 903,000 in 19, then up again in 2020. Property tax timing, as you remember, at the end of last fiscal year. Obviously, these are broken down into your key revenue sources, with your main revenue source being your property taxes there. And you can see the fluctuation based on that fiscal year end June 30th cutoff. The next slide shows the expenses for each of those 3 fiscal years too. And you can see it fluctuates up again this fiscal year, along with the revenue increase compared to 2019 and 2018. But you can see here, supervisors broken down at a very high level, but into the supervisor's office, the assessor's office over that 3-year period, the grants, and then the general assistance, with the planned increase in expenditures to bring down the general assistance and use that funding, use that restricted funding. The next slide shows the net position, which I mentioned, just that did decrease in 2020 as compared to 2019 as you're bringing your net position balance down. Then this last slide I have here is to explain the third report that we issued in the audit process. That's the management letter. Here we just wanted to share with you anything we ran across as part of the audit process. And we just have 2 items we're noting here. One is required to disclose that we assist and we prepare the financial statements. In a perfect world, you would have staff that would prepare the financial statements and we audit them. But as is frankly the case with most of our clients with small and medium-sized governments and nonprofits, we typically do prepare the financial statements, but it's something we're required to share here. Then the second item is the bank reconciliation process. You have, I know we'd had a finding in the past about reviewing bank reconciliations, and you guys did put in place, management team did put in place a bank reconciliation process that's a good process and is a documented review, which we think is a very good, very strong internal control. The only thing we add to that this year is just making sure if there are reconciling items on it, really reviewing those and making sure the reconciling items are cleared out on a timely basis or corrected rather than left as a reconciling item. That related to a couple of the adjustments that we had during the audit process. But overall, a very, very clean report, especially considering the unusual year everyone had that pulled people in different directions and different working arrangements. So overall, I think it was a very good audit. Very quick run through of it. Does anyone have any questions for me, or Danielle, if you want to add anything also, you can do that.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Dennis, you had a question?
Yeah. One of your slides you showed to us that over the last 3 years, there's been our net position balance has decreased. Does that mean that the reserve funds are less this year than they were a couple of years ago? Is that what I'm watching or seeing? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So during the levy process, you might remember that in that memo, I explained that because of the reduction in levy and the increase in, as you can see, there was a decrease in the supervisor's office expenditures pretty significantly when I came in. But there was a pretty significant increase, stepped up increase in general assistance payments. Mm-hmm. So essentially for us to cover the client base and to truly provide rental assistance, which was something this town board wanted even prior to my leadership coming in, we needed to deficit spend. So then the question was, will we continue to deficit spend or will we cut services? And 63% of Urbana voters said, no, we'd like you to stop deficit spending, but also not cut programs. So we're going to approve an increase in your tax levy. So basically we predicted, we've been in the lucky part of the position I came into 4 years ago is that we had a healthy fund balance, even if we didn't have healthy annual revenues. So we've been able to use that fund balance to basically support people, meet our obligation, our state-based obligation for general assistance and grow our programs. Mm-hmm.
So do you think that the fund balance will even out or will it increase?
Absolutely. Slightly? Yeah, no, the intention essentially is that we stop deficit spending with if you approve the levy increase this evening, that's the final step to that piece, then deficit spending would end, and except in, extenuating circumstances like we might, the town board might choose to do a capital expenditure and, build a new building, or we may decide to do a kind of one-time allocation or deal with a an unusual event. But I don't anticipate going forward that we would be paying any kind of general operations or regular assistance by deficit spending. That's the point of increasing the levy.
Okay, thanks a lot then.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bill Brown had a question.
Yeah, just a couple of minor details. Since you brought up capital spending, I'll start with that one. On page 17, there's, I remember we had in the budget a capital, I think we were going to try to start a capital plan or capital fund of some sort and set aside $150,000, but then it was never spent. So did we just decide not to do that?
So, and Hope and I actually just spoke about kind of the proper way of doing, I said, going forward with this next budget year, what we did is I made it a line item in our budget to set aside, but actually it really needs to be allocated as a separate fund. And there's different ways to do that. Hope, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that basically you can either authorize me to set aside a certain amount in a capital fund. And we talked about, we don't have to do it as a separate bank account, but that might be the cleanest approach. And we do have a bank account right now that we don't use, that we could use for that purpose. Or you could set aside that fund, rather than authorizing me to set it aside, you could set it aside. So those are the two options. And we just actually, as we were closing out the audit, I asked Hope for some specific direction on how to do that capital improvement fund, because I'm concerned that we don't really have a designated savings account outside of the Carl fund, Carl OSF, set aside for that tax liability. It's really a proper protocol for us to do a capital improvement set aside. And so it's our intention with this revised budget that we go ahead and do that. And I have some direction from CLA on that. And just for the record, CLA will continue to provide quarterly accounting services. They actually provide our office with a quarterly cleanup. Outside, it's a separate division than the auditing division, necessarily so, but we're continuing to engage with them, even though we'll be going out for bid for, an audit for next year with a different service.
Okay, thanks. That sounds good. I know the library does something similar too. I think they might have a separate account, but I'm not sure. My other question on page 16, right before that, note 11, subsequent events, said that subsequent to year end, the township entered into a 2-year contract for the imagery, the pictometry imagery for $40,000. We just approved that in October and this ended in June, so.
Yeah, that's because at the end, so right before they prepare the audit statement, Hope comes and basically asks, are there any major expenditures in this fiscal year that we're in now that we should be aware of? And so we declare any legal liabilities, any changes in governance, any major expenditures, so that they're, even though they're not in the fiscal year that's covered. I believe, Hope, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's why that shows up.
Amount, we probably could have passed on it, but what the accounting standards setters said, we want to go through the date of your audit report, and our report is dated in November, I think. I don't remember the exact date. But so readers of these financial statements know that, say you have $500,000 in cash at June 30th, but have you committed to spending $600,000 after the end of the year, we still have to ask questions and look at things through our audit report date. So that's why we have to disclose any subsequent events or commitments or contingencies that occur after the fiscal year end, if they're of significance.
Okay, thanks.
That one may not necessarily qualify, but it was one we knew about, and so we did include that disclosure.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Hope.
Thank you.
Next item is ordinance T20-12-003, which is an ordinance levying taxes for all town purposes for the town of Cunningham, Champaign County, Illinois for the tax year 2020, collectible in 2021. Is there a motion to get this on the table?
I'll move the ordinance be approved.
And I'll second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Mary Alice. Discussion. Okay. Bill?
Just, I know we talked about how you'd estimated the total amount and will very likely be reduced. When it's reduced, will it come out proportionally equal from both funds, the town fund and the general assistance fund?
Doesn't have to. It's actually the process, and I thank Wayne for schooling me on this process, is that the clerk's office will basically limit the amount that we can levy. They will send to me the limited amount, and they will estimate a division between the two funds on our behalf and say, do you want it broken up this way or some other way? And I almost always, I think I have always said, revised it and basically set the division of funds to be appropriate to what the anticipated need is. So as we told the public, we anticipated that the levy increase would be for assistance. And as you can see in this balance, we've basically added the increased levy to the assistance fund. Now, both sides have increased because, as you know, we have to kind of anticipate if Carl comes back on the rolls, if we have a significant growth that is recorded at end of year. But what I will do is when the clerk sends this to me, I will speak with Wayne, and we will set down and figure out the division. And the goal is to basically allocate those new dollars to the assistance fund. And you should see that in the way that it's levied, as well as the budget that you'll be approving.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is Resolution T-2020-12-025R, resolution authorizing the Township Supervisor to execute a lease agreement with the new Lincoln Square LLC for use of space for the Township Assessor. Is Wayne speaking to this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So basically what this is with the growth in the supervisor's office, we started to exceed what the space at the current township building could have. And so Danielle and I talked about different options, and we decided to go out and look for space to lease. This space, basically it equates out to $850 a month paid up front. And the reason it's paid up front is because it's quite a bit of a discount that we're getting from the previous rent of approximately $1,000. And then we would have to pay the utilities over $50 a month. But hopefully there wouldn't be much expense with that. So that's it.
Okay, is there a motion to get this on the floor? Bill?
I'll move approval of resolution number T-2020-12-025R, resolution authorizing the Township Supervisor to execute a lease agreement with the new Lincoln Square.
Okay, I'll second that.
Moved by Bill Brown, seconded by Dennis. Further discussion? Will the clerk, Mary Alice?
Wayne, I was just hoping that you could clarify for the public, your plan is to move the whole assessor's office over to Lincoln Square, is that correct?
That's the plan.
And when would that move take place roughly?
As soon after the 1st as possible.
Okay, so I just wanted the public to know exactly what we're doing here and who's moving where. So the whole office is going to be picked up and moved over to Lincoln Square, and then the supervisor's office will have the entire building.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my staff expands with the semester starting with 2 new full-time social work interns. So that would be kind of the hard deadline of it. But basically people will see a presence for the township in Lincoln Square in January.
I believe we have voice over IP for telephone systems. So your telephone number is staying the same. Everything else is staying the same except for your physical location.
Right. And so we're in the process of getting utilities set up, specifically internet. That's been a harder process than I expected, but hopefully we'll have something ready in the next couple weeks.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thanks, Mary Alice. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is Resolution T 2020-12-026R, a resolution approving and ratifying an appeal of the decision of the Champaign County Board of Review to the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board. Wayne?
So what this is in regards to is a property that appealed their assessment. I had their assessment at one level. They wanted it lower. They had an appraisal to support their position. We ended up having to get an appraisal to support the assessment. Turns out that the appraisal came in over the assessment. The Board of Review decided to leave the assessment the same. And so this is an appeal of the board's decision to PTAB. And what this resolution does is ratify and approve the decision to appeal as it's already been sent off as of Friday and received this morning.
Is there a motion to get this on the floor?
Motion to accept the resolution.
Moved by Jared,
I'll second it.
seconded by Bill Colebrook. Further discussion? Mary Alice?
So Wayne, I just want to clarify the public. So we have two different assessments, actually three: your original assessment, the property owner's assessment that they had, that they paid for, and then the assessment that we had to pay for to confirm our assessment. So the Board of Appeals heard the case, and which one did they uphold? Did they uphold the existing assessment, or did they uphold the one based on one of the appraisals?
They upheld the existing assessment.
Okay, so the reason why we're moving forward is because the assessment that you had to confirm yours was higher than the one that you originally gave them. Is that right?
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm the order of everything.
Sharice, did you have a question?
Mary Alice covered it for me.
Okay. Any further comment? Dennis?
Was the new assessment significantly higher than the previous one? Is it why we're like taking this further, or is it almost a negligible improvement?
So I just want to get the terminology correct. I did the assessment. The assessment for this property is approximately $1,888,000. I did some rounding there, but approximately $1,880,000. The property owner had an appraisal from January 1 of 2019 for approximately 1.6 million. We to defend the assessment, I got an appraisal done, and that appraisal came out to approximately $2,015,000.
I see. All right.
Any other questions or comments?
Did I answer your question fully, Dennis?
Yeah, you know, it's $200,000 higher almost, so I think it must be a large property.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is resolution number T 2020-12-027R, a resolution authorizing the Cunningham Township Supervisor to sign a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield for health insurance coverage.
This is our annual health insurance coverage. We have gone with Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO for a number of years and served the needs of our staff well. We also have an FSA account, which you actually approved the renewal of last month. So essentially, we are meeting with our broker tomorrow morning to finalize. We will most likely renew the plan that we currently have. In addition, we'll allow for several other plans that under the gold level to be selected. And we're looking at providing incentives in case those are selected. So essentially, this allows us to renew our health insurance plan for next year.
Is there a motion to get this item on the table or yeah, before the board?
I'll make the motion to put resolution number T2020-12-027R for approval.
Second?
I'll second.
By Mary Alice, seconded by Bill Brown. Further discussion? Bill?
It was hard for me to tell from the chart if there would be any significant increases in costs or changes in coverage. Do you anticipate anything?
So we'll keep the current plan. So in terms of coverage, there isn't a significant, sometimes your plan disappears. In this case, it did not. That was good. There is an overall cost increase for two reasons. One is we have additional employees that have coverage. So if you work 30 hours or more, you are covered under our insurance plan. The second is that there's an annual increase that comes with health insurance. And I forget, Wayne maybe remind me what the increase was for the plan that we're in. Was it
8%?
8% increase.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is item resolution number 2020-12-028R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a grant agreement with Urbana Neighborhood Connections for $30,000.
So as you recall, this is the last of the Consolidated Social Service Fund proposed grants that the committee had suggested to you be funded by the township. And the only, we've essentially, most of the groups that we funded from township were food related. In this case, this was an in-person service provider for youth services. And so we were awaiting from them a response about how their service had changed under COVID. And I received that response. I included it in the documentation. So I checked in with the jury to ask if they had any concerns moving forward. People said that they did not. And so we're ready to confirm that grant for them.
Is there a motion to get this before the board? Bill Brown?
I'll move approval of resolution number T2020-12-028R, resolution authorizing supervisor to sign a grant agreement with Urbana Neighborhood Connections.
A second.
Moved by Bill Brown, seconded by Sharice. Further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yeah, they do good work. I'll say yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Last item, well, second to the last item on the agenda is resolution number T2020-12-029R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an intergovernmental agreement for services of the Urbana Free Library.
Okay, last thing on the agenda, and very briefly, but this is very exciting. So you may recall last month was library sign up for your library card month. The issue for a lot of our participants is if you cannot provide proof of Urbana residency, you cannot get a library card according to Illinois state law. So I've been requesting for some time some options so that when we have verified that somebody is homeless in Urbana, that they would be able to access a library card and library services. Celeste Choate, our director, has been extremely collaborative. We've been looking at all available options, and we were able to really kind of model what we're doing after what the City of Champaign Library is doing with See You at Home. So essentially what we'll do is we will basically qualify that somebody is homeless in Urbana. They will able to receive a card. They will not, there will not be overdue fees applied in this situation. If there are damaged or lost items, the township would be responsible for the lost and damaged items. And I'm really excited about this because I think it'll open up that service to our participants. And it's really important that everybody be included in library services, even those without a stable or fixed or safe address to use. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, is there a motion to get this before the board?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I'd like to move resolution T 2020-12-029R, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an intergovernmental agreement for services of the Urbana Free Library.
I'll second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Sharice. Further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Definitely yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. And last item on the agenda is approval of the 2021 Town Board meeting schedule, which was included in your packet. Is there a motion to get this on the floor?
I'll move that we accept the proposed meeting dates for calendar year 2021.
But
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Bill Colebrook. Any discussion? No. Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before the town board, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.